So my name's Tom Aiello with MARCH Marketing. As they get the AV set up, I'll just do a little bit of a background on our organization. So we're a military advertising agency. So in 2011, we had this crazy idea to start an ad agency around focusing on the military community. There's agencies that focus on women, millennials. We said we're just going to focus on 25 million Americans that have worn the uniform. So as we started on that journey, you know about great marketing, great creative is driven by great insights. And so how do you get great insights? Through research. So back in 2013, we did our first omnibus study. So that's a fancy word for sort of longitudinal research that looks at all parts of the military lifestyle, media consumption, shopping behaviors, going to college, getting a job. We followed that up in 2015 with another huge survey around this. And these are great insights that help us provide better marketing for our clients in the community. In 2016, we actually did research around veterans in healthcare. We had a lot of healthcare companies starting to come to us saying, we're really interested. We've got this thing called Veterans Choice. What's going on in the space? So we did research around veterans in healthcare and some really cool ways of really understanding how veterans' approach to healthcare is very different than the average American. And that brings us up to 2017. Right now, you here are the first group of people that actually get to see the findings of our military shopper revolution research. So it's kind of exciting. What we did is we talked to 3,000 respondents about their shopping behaviors, their shopping attitudes. Now, I will warn you, it's a 130-page research report. So we're going to keep it somewhat top line today. But hopefully there's some good insights. And again, insights drive great marketing. So anybody ever been to a VA hospital, okay, in the room? You go in a VA hospital, do you know why people wear the shirts that say Marines, Army, or the ball caps that have the ship they served in? You know why? Anybody have a guess of why people wear that? Exactly. I thought it was like, well, I don't need to show I was in the Army, that I'm in the right place. But they want to start a conversation with somebody else there about, hey, that's the ship I served in. That's the unit I was in. So again, great insights, and that's what I'm hopefully going to share with you today about some of those really cool insights that can make great creative and great marketing. And folks in the community can better serve, whether you're a marketer, whether you're a brand, whether you got a business, better serve the community. We're still working on this, so I'm in my mind now clicking through slides. First slide is going to be talking about the planned military shopper. I'm so impressed I actually remember that. So when the military community goes out and we go shopping, 90% of the time we stick to whatever is on our shopping list. We are not impulse buyers. We are military planners, for God's sake, right? We get a plan. Well, how do you get on the military shopper shopping list? Well, the way you do that is through value. So things like coupons, things like sales, savings programs are critical to get on that shopping list. Value is a huge driver of the military shopper. They're such a planned shopper. Very important, value-driven conversation about how you go about getting on that shopping list of the veteran, of the military member as they're going to the commissary. They're going to go buy something. The next piece is military discounts. So speaking of value, military discounts are a huge way to deliver on value. So value, one thing you hear today, it's value is such a driver with the military shopper. A lot of other factors. Military discounts. So 85% of the respondents said, you know what? I will shop at a business that is offering a military discount 85% of the time more than one that doesn't. So military discounts are a huge driver for this audience. And again, when I talk about this audience, the military shopper I'm talking about, active, National Guard, reserve, veteran, retiree, mil spouse, veteran spouse, all together. And it's an important audience. Lauren's going to give you a lot of insight in the scope and scale of that audience. But it's strategic. A lot of businesses we talk to, they say, there's no more new markets. You know, we've tapped the African American, the Hispanic market. We've tapped the millennial market. There's no new markets, but the military shoppers are strategic audience. They are a new market. And so now a lot of new organizations are going after that market in a big way. Back on military discounts. An important factor in military discounts is what is the right level of the discount? You can't give military shoppers the same discount that you're giving to everyone else. It's not gonna ring true. They're just gonna say, I could have got that anyhow, right? But how high is too high? How high is too low? It's real important to set that right threshold where it's motivating. Another big factor is that you have to target new customers. So if you roll out a new, and this is why Lowe's and Home Depot don't necessarily like their military discount programs. They never say it publicly, but because they're eating up some of their profit margin. They do it for the right reasons, to give them credit. But when you do a military discount program, you have to go out and you have to target new customers, because when you do, you're going to acquire a lot of new customers. Under Armour did that really successfully with their military discount program. If you don't, you're just going to be taking profit margin from your existing customer base and giving it up. And that's not a successful way to go about it. Another factor on military discounts is fraud prevention. So in some cases, we'll work with businesses that say, we don't really care if everyone uses this. You know, we think it's good, let's get it out there. But in a lot of cases, like a cell phone carrier, automaker, they want some verification. And so I know we've got GovX represented here, SureID, ID.me, they're all great verification engines. The key nuance there from a military discount perspective is they're all different, right? They all provide different sort of nuances, some strengths and some have weaknesses. So looking at a verification engine for your client, your business, is really important to determine what's the best fit. So going off memory, after military discounts is cause marketing. So not all of the purchase patterns and behaviors of military shoppers is driven by just price. It is the number one, but there are other things. So the number is 72%. Oh, here we go. Just in time, because I was really struggling to get that last number. Here we go. We'll go right through. Trip down memory lane here. There we go. This is the factors. Get a sense of deja vu, anyone? We go military discounts, back there, cause marketing. So 9 in 10 military shoppers act on brands that support military and veteran causes. What I thought was interesting is, yes, we're socially responsible as shoppers, but it has to be a military or veteran cause, and that was interesting. It's not enough that you've got a charity cause or you're all about sustainability. What's interesting is that it has to be a military charity, and this is most pronounced behavior for those that are still in uniform, active duty, National Guard, Reserve, their spouses. But again, this is where you sort of veer off just the value equation. Cause marketing has an impact with this group of shoppers. The age-old question, on base versus off base. So what is the right answer there? Well, 50% of everyone researched said that if I can shop at the commissary, you know what? I'm going to save money. I know that for a fact. But to shop on base, proximity is a huge driver. I got to be within like 5 miles of that base if I'm going to use it. It's going to be worth my time making the trip. 92%, this is a really cool insight. 92% say that when I shop on a base, you know what? I'm supporting the military's cause. I'm not just getting a good value, a good deal. I'm supporting the military. 72% said, you know what? I'm socially responsible when I buy on base. That's interesting to think about. The military shoppers is taking it to that level, that they feel that it's actually supporting the community when they shop on base. So I think it's an interesting insight. Speaking of shopping on base, for those that didn't have PX privileges, in a few weeks, veterans are going to get PX privileges online. And so the big question there is, hey, when veterans are able to finally get to shop at the PX, at least online, it is tax-free now, are they going to go? Well, the research said 75% are going to take advantage of that. That's a pretty big number of veterans that are looking forward to shopping at the PX online. That's a big number. And I know that talking with some other online retailers, they're very interested. That's a $34 billion market. So that has a lot of online retailers paying close attention to, hey, how does that online PX thing work? What do you mean they don't have to pay taxes when they buy there? So an interesting nuance that I think a lot of you in the room, based on your connections and your businesses, could tap into this in some ways. Go. What about you in the room? Military influencers. So what's your role in military shopping? I'm just going to make that little noise. Well, the number one influencer is social media. And I think you all probably intuitively knew that. Social media is the number one influencer in shopping for military shoppers. 72% are active in social media, Facebook being the dominant platform among the military shoppers. But military bloggers, influencers, you in this room are a key influence in that. We looked at what categories you hold the greatest influence. These were at the top of the list: food, restaurants, home repair, travel, auto, tech, health, outdoors. Influencer campaigns in these categories bear the most fruit for advertisers, for brands, for retailers. And what's cool is there's a lot more organization and sophistication to this. Just the fact that you're all at this conference speaks to where this is going. Click. So this is, Procter & Gamble has created this community. This is sort of a next evolution of some of the things that are happening in this space. They've created these influencer communities for women. I think it's called Focus Group. They've got one for the Heartline, and now they've got one for veterans. So this is a chance for influencers that are looking to get paid opportunities to get into a community like that, and then they'll tap you to do certain activations and things around bigger brands. You get access to brands, you get revenue. It's a good model, I think, for all concerned. So look for more trends like this, more organization to the military influencer space like this playing out in the near future. Click. So these are some of the highest indexing military shopper categories. So I'll quickly run through these. First is grocery. One more time. So again, a $32.5 billion opportunity. Here, a lot of variables determine where I buy my groceries as a military shopper. Again, know that value is a huge driver. We love private label because we like the value they represent. Women in military shopper households do drive this category, the grocery category, but increasingly men are starting to get involved, mostly the older men in terms of that whole age spectrum. The older men are getting involved into the decision for groceries. Next. Again, this idea of support of the military starts to come up again pretty quick down the list in terms of variety, convenience, location, and then support of the military. As a military shopper, you can get my attention, and I will pay attention in the grocery category. One trend is we're starting to see in the research that online shopping is starting to take hold with the military audience. Mostly the younger military shoppers are starting to get into this, but what we're seeing in terms of their brand preference is the commissary.coms of the world are behind Walmart.com, Amazon Fresh, and those more established brands, so they have some catching up to do. But look for this online grocery to continue to take hold among military shoppers. Next, drugstores. So drugstores are kind of cool, right? Because you've got the pharmacy side of the house and you got the front house, right? So you've got two sort of dynamics that are playing out. What's interesting here is everyone assumes, oh, veterans, military, they get it at the VA, right? But look at these other brands: Walgreens, Kroger, CVS, Walmart, Target. There's a lot of other places that they're going to get prescriptions. And what's interesting is if you look at like that 7% that are going to CVS, that's a much younger target there, and they're going there much more frequently than somebody going to like a Walmart or a Walgreens. So there's a lot of nuance in the drugstore space that is sort of insightful and interesting. Next one, please. The wireless category. So about 8% of military shoppers over the next 6 months are going to change their cellular plan. So that's a huge opportunity if you're one of the big cellular carriers. Well, beyond looking at coverage, customer service, again, military discounts are a key way to win a military shopper over. So again, this idea of value continues to sort of pull through this whole presentation and set of attitudes. Next. Small electronics. So it should not be a surprise that the next small consumer electronics purchase most military shoppers are going to make a TV set, right? But what is interesting is that 8 out of 10 of them are going to say, hey, you know what? I will wait for that TV set to go on sale before I buy it. I'm in no hurry. I'm going to hold off until I get the price that I want to get. And military shoppers are not above showrooming. We'll try out stuff in store and we'll go buy it online. We'll also in store, we're not too proud to pull out the phone and start comparing prices too. We're very price and value driven. Next. Alcohol sales. So 25% of military shoppers will visit a liquor store on a monthly basis. Again, a huge category. Beyond some of the drivers there, beyond value, because it is such an important one, some of the beer brands have appeal with military shoppers that sort of tap into that American heritage. So that can sometimes override my focus on value. So little insight there on some of the alcohol brands. Next. Motorcycles, $10.2 billion industry. Motorcycles are part of the military experience. From the day I put on the uniform, motorcycles all over base. And it continues as you're a veteran as well. Here in rank order, you see popularity of motorcycle brands. And of course, the American brands sort of dominate the scene. But what you see below 40 years old, the sport bikes, the street bikes, the Kawasaki's, the Yamahas are popular with that younger 40 under set. And the number one way that a purchase is driven is through influencer marketing. So if I was a motorcycle brand, I would build a military shopper program with a cornerstone of an influencer program because it is such an important way that people decide what motorcycle they're going to buy. Last one here, I think, is banking and investments. Next one. So only 14% of military shoppers do their banking on base. So the rest of us are all off base, and predominantly we're online, right? We like to do our banking online just based on our lifestyle, the convenience that comes with that. From an investment standpoint, most of the older military community is sort of set in terms of their pension, their investments, but the younger members seem very open to changing their current retirement plan to the new blended retirement system. And financial institutions, from a communication standpoint, it was very important, the shopper said, that we understand the specialization around a bank to our community. That's an important factor in our decision making of who we're going to choose. So with that, we're going to set up a quick transition and go to Lauren. So you're going to sort of carry all those insights forward with you. And what Lauren's going to do is sort of go back to the first step and give you some of the idea of scale behind the community, the demographics behind the community that allow you to maybe put more dimension to it. Another cool thing is you can go ahead and get set up, please. See, this is filling. I'm sort of stretching it out right here. Another important thing she's going to talk about is the causes that are most important to our community. You heard about how causes are very important to the community in terms of our attitudes and behaviors as shoppers. So what Lauren's going to do is give you some insights of what are those that are most important to us, most near and dear to our hearts. So while they're doing a quick change here, I'll just open up for a quick question just to fill in. Anything you saw, you had a question on? Yeah.
You mentioned charities. Did you find research that shows that the product had to be specific on what charities they donated to, or were your shoppers happy with, we donate 10% to first responder and military charities?
It was more focused on legitimate support, so more so, housing, employment, family, less so, pizzas and theater, So there's sort of core causes that were most important to the community, and there's some that are on the peripheral that, in the community they kind of look at as, well, those are nice to have. Things have to be legitimate, and they're best if they're aligned, like if you're Sears, it has to be home-related, Home Depot, home-related charities, rebuilding a home or something like that. So the better you can get that alignment, the better it's going to motivate the community.
And what about publications that the military, I did 28 years, but I don't know, right now I can't tell you what publications I looked at other than Navy Times. Is there any other data that shows what military shoppers' primary publication might be?
Yeah, I'll do a quick top line on that and then hand it off to Lauren. We're mostly digital now. That's our number one. We over-index in our consumption of digital media just because we're active lifestyles. Military print still does work. I would say less so for military bases, more so for military specialized print. So there are some publications that are still very effective to reach the audience. But again, I would say if you're sort of going out of the gates, digital is the way to go, just because it's measurable, it's more targeted, and it's more cost efficient. So that'd be the way to start. And with that, introduce Lauren.
I think there was one other question
Oh,
over there.
yes.
I was just wondering, in your data, did you control for age and financial status to see how the military differs from civilian?
We did not do a control that was We've compared to similar statistics that are available on the American population as a whole, just for sort of line of sight, but we did not do the same survey across the board to get that sort of sample comparison. Okay. And Lauren.
Click on. All right. All right. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, thank you, Tom, for that. And I apologize. I will not be able to do this off of memory, unlike Tom, who did a great job over there. I'm Lauren Jenkins from Scout Comms, and I am the vice president of Scout Comms, one of them, and also the managing director of Scout Insight. So it was great to hear Tom talk about how insight drives marketing. We also firmly believe that insight drives communications, insight drives mission success. A little bit about my background. We have to update this. I've been with Scout Comms for over 5 years now, so probably closer to 6 now. And we just launched Scout Insight here in January with a focus really on how to help people like you better understand the veterans and military family communities. And we know a lot of you also, you members of the military family or veterans community, but I think what we see a lot there are many myths that have to be busted about who the veterans community is, who the military family communities are, and what that means for people trying to communicate and reach out to these communities. So Scout Comms, our firm founded by Fred Wellman, CEO and founder over there, I think we're celebrating, 7 years next month, which is very exciting. Have to remember to actually do something for our anniversary. We're always running so quickly around Veterans Day and other big events that we generally forget to celebrate ourselves. But we're a consulting firm that helps companies and nonprofits operate in the veterans and military family communities, helps them understand who the community is, helps them reach out and talk about the programs, talk about their offers, their military discounts, et cetera. We started, I think, as a PR firm, and today we do a lot more than that. So we're very excited to have Scout Insight now as part of the company, where we focus really on research. We focus on data and really understanding and illuminating who this community is to outsiders as well as people like you in this room. We're very big storytellers, and we know that stories and data go hand in hand. You can have data, but numbers don't always really resonate as well as that personal story does. But you always have to have numbers to really back up what you're trying to tell an investor or tell a potential donor. So like I said, we're going to approach this with a little bit of myth busting to help everyone here kind of use the numbers to help you explain the community that you're targeting. I think Tom did a great job here of talking about military shoppers, what their values are when they're looking for value, and what their interests are and how they approach shopping at the PX or what they're looking for in a motorcycle brand. I want to help you guys understand who your audience is, really show you some numbers on the trends, what the future of the veterans and military family audience looks like, and then really open it up to questions so you can ask me or Tom some more questions. Kind of the basics, there are 1.3 million active duty service members, and then another nearly million in the reserve and guard. And then the great thing about DoD numbers is they have a different number for the same thing over and over again. So, you'll see different numbers all over the place in the way they divide it up. But, you have the reserves, the National Guard, and then as they like to count the individual ready reserve and the inactive National Guard as part of their numbers as well sometimes. So you'll see numbers over 2 million for members of the service of the military community. And as far as military families, you have over 2.7 million family members for both active duty service members as well as Guard members, with more than 1 million of those as military spouses. So I think earlier today, in the room, we saw raising hands, lots of service members, lots of veterans, but also the military spouse representatives here probably outnumber in some ways some members of the military itself. And I think when you're talking about your audiences and who you're looking to speak to, I think that's really important stuff to remember, is that, you know, military spouses, like Tom's research also shows, have a really big impact on buying decisions and have a big influence in the household. And I know that's something Fred, you know, he mentioned it this morning. Always keep that in mind. You know, the military spouses have a huge impact when we're talking about military families and service members' decisions, whether it's staying in the military, whether it's, you know, getting out of the military, whether it's where they're going to move and what they're going to buy as their next vehicle. So an important thing to keep in mind. And then when you think about the veteran side of things, always keeping in mind too that every year we're creating more and more veterans, and we'll see in the next slide. In a way, it's going down a bit because I'll get into it in the next slides. I get really excited about the data, especially when you really get into the numbers, because I think going into the myth busting, right? We've heard all sorts of numbers over the years working in this space. Sometimes we'd heard 250,000 people are getting out of the military every year, and we have to find every single one of them a job. I think closer to what the number is when you look at them, it's about 200,000. It's a little less than that. Last year, that was about 180,000 people leaving the military. And then when you break it down by type, quite a few of those are leaving involuntarily, so not necessarily people who are going to be the easiest to employ. A big chunk of those are also retiring, and certainly some retirees are going into looking for jobs, but a good number of those maybe you're going into entrepreneurship or looking to go back to school to get an education and you know, start in a whole different career field. And then about half are sort of I think of what we think of as the typical veteran, just leaving the military, looking immediately for another job, maybe doing 4 years, maybe doing 6 years. About the average age of separation is about 25, so you're looking at younger veterans, but just, you know, not as many of them as I think sometimes when you read headlines, you're going to be led to think that there's this huge deluge of veterans getting out of the military, looking for jobs. And I think that's something that's for us, working with Student Veterans of America, working with Hiring Our Heroes, you know, we're always trying to level set exactly, you know, who are these veterans getting out and what are they going to be looking to do? You know, is it going back to school? Is it going to get a job? And then, you know, when you look at the numbers, you're talking about a much smaller number of people than I think a lot of companies might be thinking when they're looking at, you know, starting veterans hiring initiatives, et cetera. And talking about the fact that there aren't that many veterans getting out these days, looking at the trends from the VA numbers on who the size of the veterans population and their age. The dark blue number is from 2013, and the lighter blue is the projected age of veterans in 2030. And you can see, you know, currently most veterans are older, the World War II veterans and the Korea veterans and the Vietnam veterans. And so looking ahead into the future, you know, those numbers are going to decline and also kind of level out a bit as well, just because of the rates that the military has been engaged overseas and the current op tempo and the churn, just the general churn in the military. So I think when you're looking ahead at, you know, 5, 10-year, 15, 20-year plans and thinking about what you and your business and your goals are, keeping in mind the fact that you're going to be looking at a smaller veterans population and also kind of a different demographic as well, as far as age goes. And then speaking of changing demographics, again, looking kind of at the far number, how the veterans population overall will be declining, but looking at the other parts of the veterans population, the total proportion of female veterans, for instance, will be rising over the next 20, 50 plus years. Projected percentage of minority veterans also going to be rising. So as you think about your audiences, you think about who you're talking to as part of, you know, your influencer campaigns, it's going to be the look of the veterans population is going to be changing, and I think those are things that you really need to keep in mind as you are branding and rebranding and growing your organizations and campaigns. And then one of my other favorite slides is more of the myth busting on who the veterans population is. So I think something that we hear a lot, not from people in this room, but I'm sure you probably hear things like this as well, that veterans are kind of the charity cases. They, maybe don't make as much money. They maybe experience mental health issues at a far higher rate than the civilian population. Maybe they're not as educated. But what we see from the data is that veterans have a higher annual income than non-veterans, which, going back to Tom's research, obviously very important when you want to consider, are you marketing to them? Are you, what are you expecting to get on your return on investment from the veterans community? Veterans are almost equally as likely to suffer from mental health problems as civilians. So, the veterans population is not some desperate population of people who really are, I think, who was it earlier in the other room? I think it was Mark from Street Shares. When he talked to early investors about Street Shares, people who are, he would get the response that, you can't trust veterans as entrepreneurs, which I think obviously we see is incorrect. And I think the numbers, when you really go into it, play that out. Veterans are, more likely, or non-veterans are more likely to experience unemployment, which is something maybe you couldn't say 5, 10 years, or 5, 6 years ago, but today, for sure, certainly, veterans are doing better in the hiring world. Something else I know Mark mentioned, but the veterans aren't as educated, and we're a little bit biased here, but Student Veterans of America is one of our clients, and they can tell you more than 1 million veterans have used the post 9/11 GI Bill to go to school after leaving the military, and that I think when you look at the numbers, again, most young veterans are going to school, getting an education, getting a certificate, maybe deciding that 4 years isn't the right avenue for them, but going and getting a associate's degree in business, or going to get a skill certification and become a project manager, getting these skills that will help them either in their chosen entrepreneur, field as an entrepreneur, or go into a company looking for a new job. And then I know Fred's favorite statistics, that veterans own 9% of all U.S. businesses and are, huge contributors to the world of small business. And so we share these numbers with you not because you don't know these things. I think everyone here knows that veterans are doing very well and are succeeding. But these are, I think, numbers that you can use when you go off and talk to potential investors, or when you're talking to people outside of the veterans and military family community who might have these misconceptions about what the military community is and who they are and how big the market is, or how much influence you have over what kind of people. And you can go to them and say, look, veterans have more money to spend on, on whatever, they're making more money than non-veterans. They are highly educated. They are the next leaders in America. And this is, by investing in our community, you're going to get a big return on that investment. And then we're going to go into a few maps because, who isn't a map geek? And if you aren't, well, I'm going to hope to change your mind. And these are kind of, again, I'll steal Tom's word, but top level. So these are state by state. And if you're very interested, we can get you, congressional district, census tract, deeper data. But, where are veterans? And I think, again, this is something that pretty well known, but California, Texas, Florida, huge veterans populations. But when you look at where, which states are getting, where the percentages are on where state veterans are moving, it looks a little bit different. Virginia has one of the fastest growing veterans populations in the country. The green states are also where you're seeing a lot of veterans going. And then you can also see where veterans are leaving. California, unsurprisingly, really, really expensive to live there. And if you have portable job skills, like many veterans do, why not take them somewhere else where you're going to get a bigger bang for your buck? This is where the young veterans are going. And here it's really interesting when you see the northern states where this is the most recent data from the VA. There's more recent census data, but especially in 2014, when you think about fracking and oil discovery in North Dakota. You had a lot of young veterans moving up there, and it kind of, this shows a little bit how, we see young veterans are going where the jobs are, where the opportunities are. And this was in 2014. In 2018, what's that going to look like? These are the kind of trends you think you kind of want to stay on top of as you're thinking about, where are the people that I'm talking to? Where are the young veterans? Where are the trendsetters? Where are they going, and why are they going there? So, as you can look at that kind of data over time, especially to monitor your audiences and monitor the community that you're talking to. Similarly, and this is a little bit of an anecdote to the 25 and under veteran population. This is where the older veterans are living. And this is the more, this is where in the first slide we saw that California, Texas, and Florida have the overall population of veterans. It's because the older generation of veterans, that's where they've settled. And again, as the population of older veterans passes, we're going to see shifts in the demographics of where veterans are living. And again, just important things to keep in mind as you're, thinking about, I was in Kayla Woods or a presentation earlier, mobile businesses that can survive PCSs. That being able to have portable kinds of businesses, portable campaigns, that's going to help you reach people where they are rather than be stuck perhaps where your audience is not. Another part of, this is a lot of what we kind of do at Scout Insight is help people understand where the veterans community and how to reach them. We do a lot of that through our PR with Scout Comms. Something else we have that we find really helps us really even understand what our own mission is finding out from veterans themselves what they want. And so I think some of the things that speak to me most are the fact that veterans want to be connected to their neighbors. I think that's something we hear a lot about, is that civil-military divide and how to connect veterans in their communities to their neighbors. And I think a lot of you folks here, that's what you're doing through blogs, through your businesses, is connecting not only with the veterans community, but also outside of that and talking about what you do, whether, we heard from Emily this morning who talked about using military surplus supplies to create a whole business that appeals to people across the spectrum. And, I've seen non-veterans, you see guys carrying around, really cool tote bags made by a female veteran. Like, it's pretty awesome when you think about it, and think how many questions that raises too when someone asks, hey, where'd you get that really great bag? And there's a whole story behind it. And I think the more that, this community can help ask those questions and get those questions asked, I think will really help solve what we hear from veterans saying they want more of, is that connection. And we see from the data that veterans are themselves trying to bridge that gap by volunteering in their community, by voting, by being members of their community. And I think the more that all of us here can do to deepen those connections, I think is very powerful. The next few slides are, also I keep saying this, but these are actually my favorite slides. I'm not sure how, I'm not sure, I think I'm going to be able to, at the end, I'm going to try to be able to tie these back in. But the other big myth that I hear so often is that there's 45,000 charities serving the veterans community. The thing is, when you go back or when you dive into the IRS filings, which, again, nerd, I love diving into the IRS filings of all these organizations, you find that a huge chunk, nearly 28,000 of those, are VFW and American Legion posts, because they all register as 501c3s. And so if you just do the top level scan, you get 45,000 organizations registered to serve the veterans and military communities. But when you take out all the VFW and AMVETS and American Legion posts, there's about 6,500 organizations that are serving veterans in the military family communities. And then when you look at the big ones, like the Wounded Warrior Projects of the world, even smaller than that, but you get about 1,500 that are, really making more than $50,000 a year. So the number of groups that are trying to solve the problem we just saw on the last slide really can't, they can't possibly do it all by themselves. And that's where companies like Sword and Plow, like Scout Comms, like you guys are so important to this community, because not everything is a charity case, and we saw those in the previous slides too. Veterans are doing pretty well. So how do we together, as the private sector, work with the nonprofit sector to solve a lot of these problems? This one just gets a little bit deeper into the money issue about how many large organizations there are serving veterans. You think about there's 4 veteran and military serving organizations with revenue over $100 million. But you think about companies that make over $100 million that are also providing for the military and veterans community. There's a lot more. So the nonprofit sector is not going to be able to do it on their own, and I think that's where when you can, these are, I think, organizations you can partner with. Obviously, personally, I'm a member of Team Red, White, and Blue in my local DC area. Lead the cycling on Tuesday nights, and it's a great opportunity to connect veterans and civilians, but it's also a great opportunity to learn about the companies in your area who are hiring veterans. It's a great opportunity to connect veterans with other services. So I think, I think a lot of times people look towards the nonprofit sector to solve all the problems, but when you look at the numbers, that's not going to happen. They're great partners, and I think when you think about branding, your branding campaigns and your businesses, I think you need to be involved with these nonprofits, but also think about how you, as a company and as a person and as a member of the veterans community, can also be solving these problems as well. And that's sort of where this next slide comes in, my wrap-up slide. What does it all kind of mean? Tom talked a lot about where the, what military shoppers are thinking when they walk into the PX, or when they're thinking about buying a motorcycle, or what their next cell phone plan is going to be. That's all about your target audience. It's all about and the channels you're using and the messages you're using. So I think use all of this information that we gave you here today to really drive your strategy. We don't have all the answers. We have some of the ideas that you can take back to your when you're thinking about your 5-year plan. And use them to give you ideas about, all right, I know military spouses, or I know veterans over 65 years old are in Texas, but I know these young veterans that I really want to reach are in North Dakota, or they're, somewhere else. And so you need to be thinking about your target audiences and then how you're going to reach them. So is it, if it's the young veterans, it's probably, are you going to need the Snapchat glasses that we saw earlier? Maybe. You're going to need some other channel to reach those folks. As opposed to, perhaps reaching them through some other channel that's going to speak to them on their level, where they want to, where they're connecting with people of their own age and demographic. All right, and I think we're wrapping up here, which is great. And then so take a picture of this slide, which has our contact information for Scout Comms, so you can follow us and also subscribe to the Scout Report. So every Monday morning, you get the latest news and analysis of about the veterans and military family community in your inbox. All right. I think I'm just in time. And do we have time for questions, or are we going to let them go? All right. We have time for questions. In the back.
So in terms of a digital approach, generally when you look at like an outreach campaign or something like that, you can set it up nowadays where you're geo-targeting, right? You're going in, you've identified zip codes with those sort of population numbers around a particular area, and you can upload those into a digital campaign. You can set age brackets. Hey, we just want post 9/11 veterans. Here's the age bracket. Then you overlay STEM content. We're looking for veterans interested in STEM. Another prevalent way to do that is called geofencing. So you can actually geofence around, we'll do this oftentimes for military recruiting, a mall, a school. We'll do it for the veterans campaigns, we'll do it around VA hospitals, right? So, and the final thing I would say is what they call programmatic. So programmatic advertising, you'll often hear called ad networks. So instead of buying on ESPN and military.com, you buy the ad network that puts your ads on those websites, but it does it for much cheaper. They don't want you to know that. And it literally, you don't have to worry as much about the geo-targeting because it'll reach them where they're at. Everybody has a mobile device that has a digital ID. We know your age, we know your demographics, we know your household income, so you can get very targeted with those campaigns. And again, the cost is much more affordable by doing that. So it's not necessarily pay-per-click, which is the keyword buys, but we kind of like that along with social.
I think someone asked about military media earlier, and I wanted to put in a plug for my friends at Task and Purpose, who have a great online media platform. And I think something that we say at Scout Comms a lot is veterans are people. So veterans, yes, they're reading Military Times and they're reading Stars and Stripes, but they're also reading Refinery 29 and they're reading People.com and they're reading the New York Times. And obviously, you're not necessarily going to go buy ads on the NewYorkTimes.com to reach military audiences. But I think it's always important to remember that your military audiences are also where the rest of America is, and so you can. Don't be limited to the channels necessarily because it's a military channel. Would be what would be my conclusion there. That's a really interesting question. I had a meeting last week where I was talking to the head of military and veterans marketing, basically for a bank, and he mentioned we were just it was an informational meeting. We were just talking about a new company that wanted to get into the military and veteran space, and he was like, "But why? What's their why? Why are they doing it? Is it because they just haven't done it before, or do they actually have a reason to be in that space?" And I know at Scout Comms we're a benefit corporation. I left that out. Fred's going to kill me later. It's definitely going to be in my counseling. But we're a benefit corporation, so we have two bottom lines. A typical for-profit will just be all about just making money. But we have a mission statement too, which is to benefit and empower the veterans and military family communities. And so for us, we always ask that why when we take on a new client. It's why are you involved in this community? And I think we have seen those companies, not our clients obviously, but other companies that do get involved in the veteran space for the PR value of it, and not just because they want to make an impact. I think though that what we see in the veterans community is that military shoppers are very savvy. You guys can sniff out and smell something that's a PR campaign faster than anyone else. And I think that hopefully that has scared off a lot of companies from just doing something for that PR value, because people will sense that and probably not buy into it. I don't know if that totally answers the question, but.